Good morning, everybody. So I work for the Irish Wildlife Trust as a national conservation organisation, and my particular concern is biodiversity, and particularly the extinction crisis. So sometimes we hear that we declared a climate and a biodiversity emergency. Sometimes you hear people refer to the climate and ecological emergency. I'm more on the second half of the lesser known side of the emergency. So I was hoping to talk to you a little bit about that this morning very briefly. So the question maybe that is worth posing is, how bad is it? And I can guarantee you, no matter how bad you think it is, it's worse. And I can give you just some facts, and I can refer to some reports that have come out in recent years. Last year, the World Wildlife Fund, together with the Zoological Society of London, produced a report to say that 60% of the vertebrate population, so these are the big animals that live in our rivers and seas and on land, 60% of those animals have disappeared in the last 30 years. Populations have crashed. The UN's International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services came out with a report in May this year to say that 1 million species are going to be threatened with extinction within the next 20 to 30 years. We know that insect populations are crashing globally. You might have heard of this phenomenon called Insectageddon, where insect populations, even in protected areas, one study was from Germany, in protected areas, insect populations are crashing. And we know that the trends from the studies that are done here in Ireland shows that common species of insect are on the decline, such as butterflies and bumblebees. We are now facing the total collapse of global ecosystems. You no doubt saw the fires in the Amazon from this summer, which are very concerning. And of course, climate change is not driving the destruction of the Amazon. It's our consumption patterns, combined with poor governance and greed and other things as well. And of course, the Amazon now is at risk of a tipping point, turning into a savanna, that the entire rainforest will be lost. We're being told by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that coral reefs, all of them, will be dead if we get to 2 degrees of warming. And even if we get to 1.5 degrees of warming, which is looking very optimistic, about 80% of the coral reefs will die. We also see the melting of the Arctic, the transformation of the permafrost, the melting of the ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica. And only this week, scientists came out with a warning to say that we are reaching what's called a tipping point. A tipping point is another word for a collapse of the Earth's ecosystem, which means a transformation into something different. And believe me, it's not going to be good for humanity. It is going to affect our food systems, it's going to affect our water systems, it's going to affect the safe living space that many of us, certainly not all of us on this planet, have enjoyed over the last decades. And of course, the biggest system on Earth, and despite being on an island, we too often overlook the fact that we are surrounded by the ocean. But of course, the ocean system is collapsing as well. It's chronically overfished, it's polluted, it's warming, it's acidifying, it's running out of oxygen. The very fundamentals of the ocean system, the zooplankton, the tiny little creatures that form the basis of the food chain, are declining. And these are going to have major consequences. And it's fair enough for us to ask, well, we're only a small island in the North Atlantic. How is this going to affect us? Sure, isn't Ireland green and it's lovely? Look at the lovely brochures that we get from the Board Fáilte and Origin Green and others. So I can give you some figures, I suppose, on the scale of the extinction crisis as it has washed over us in the last decades. Our oceans, of course, are a shadow of what they used to be. They're mostly trawled. This is bottom trawlers going back and forth, scraping all the marine life off the bottom of the sea. Only about 1/3 of the commercially exploited fish populations in Ireland are fished at what are called sustainable limits. We were supposed to have ended overfishing in 3 weeks' time, according to the law, but that's not going to happen. Most of our rivers are polluted. In fact, we live with chronic pollution so much that we ignore the fact that they're polluted. Many of us living in Dublin had to live with a boil water notice a few weeks ago from the reservoir in Lucan. And most of the commentary was about the technology that failed us. But actually what has failed us is the contaminated water that has human and animal waste in it in the first place. About 11,500 kilometres of our rivers are drained and subject to these drainage programmes by the OPW that has completely transformed rivers, cutting them off from their floodplain, straightening and deepening them. And of course we have dams on our rivers, and that's important because it blocks the pathways of migratory fish. And that's why species like the salmon, the eel, the sea lamprey are all going extinct. The Midlands bogs, and some of you no doubt are from counties with Midlands bogs, and you'll remember the rancour over saving what's left of our Midlands bogs from about 2013. The official figure for what's left of our Midlands raised bogs is 0.6% of the original extent. And even if that figure was contested, even if it was 10 times that amount, it is still a catastrophic collapse of what was once a unique ecosystem that was not only home to unique plants and animals, but stored all the carbon and regulated the hydrological pathways that Anya spoke about. Our mountains, which most of us associate with fresh air and contact with nature, have no nature in them anymore. Most of the ecosystems there have completely collapsed. The birds don't live there anymore. They've been affected by wildfires. They've been buried under conifer plantations. They've been drained for turf cutting. And all of this has resulted in a massive wave of extinction in the living world, in Ireland, on our land and in our sea. I counted 120 different types of plants and animals that have gone extinct in Ireland. Some of them have been gone for a very long time. The last one to have gone officially extinct was a little brown bird called a corn bunting, which disappeared in the 1990s. But of course, the scientists are telling us that between 20 and 30% of everything else in Ireland is on the verge of extinction. Not on the verge of extinction, but threatened with extinction, or what's called near threatened with extinction. Basically, they're on the way out. And this is going to have very direct consequences for us here in Ireland because we are part of that web of life. We have not escaped the ecosystem despite our technology and the distance we feel from nature. And so part of the solution to that is that we have to try and make ourselves reconnect with nature once again. Anya pointed out that we have quite good legislation for the protection of nature, but basically it has been ignored. And of course, hope will not save us. Only action will save us. And if anything today, I want you to go away feeling that the time for hope and the time for dithering over whether or not we'll implement the law that's in front of us is over. We really have to move to action phase without any further delay. Thank you very much.